Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Come to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley, and joining me today, as always, are my co-host. First, it is...
Who are you pointing at?
You.
Oh, me. I'm Garrett K. Jones.
And also joining me...
I'm Brian Karasik, holding up the Empire side of the department over here.
And also joining us today is Andrew from... he is from... I know I met him on MCU
Monday and Cantina Happy Hour.
Oh,
Yes.
that's right. You are on. For some reason, I'm thinking you're on Geek Gauntlet.
Not yet. I'm hoping to be on soon.
Yeah.
Doing Prophecy out. So
Yeah,
You need to
I met Andrew during been on a couple episodes of MCU Mondays, which was fun, talking about X-Men '97 and having a lot of fun there talking about that show. But today, it is, if you're in the United States, this is Thanksgiving week, and obviously, everyone's thankful for what they're thankful for, but today I thought it'd be fun to kind of bring that into the Star Wars universe and kind of talk about some of our favorite memories, because that's one thing a lot of people might talk about when they're Thanksgiving, is memories of Thanksgivings past, memories of times with families and loved ones. So to kind of bring that into the Star Wars universe, to discuss some of our favorite moments, favorite scenes, favorite lines, characters, things like that. So let's start with Andrew. What is like a favorite scene of Star Wars that really sticks out to you?
well, I'm trying to think. I know on the Cantina Happy Hour a few months we did something like this. So I'm trying to remember what I said then. I think it's
Let's go to the tape, folks.
right. Yeah, let me rewind. I gotta say, I think it's probably Luke and Vader fight in Empire. I'm sorry, Return of the Jedi. Both are great, but I mean Return because of the emotion with the fight. Luke he's trying to save his dad, so he's not fighting full, like there's mixed conflict feelings on both ends of Luke and Vader. And so when you're watching that, it's just such a great scene for those reasons.
Yeah. What about you, Brian? Obviously I'm guessing it's going to be something with the Emperor.
I'm going to surprise you. My favorite scene, there's so many classics with Palpatine, it's hard to pick, but I'm going to say the execution of Order 66 in Episode 3.
Ooh, that's a good
Specifically, the moment that Yoda is seen feeling it. And we have to do a little homework for the movie here. I have to give the visual effects department credit for this, because Yoda, in the prequels, Yoda is one of the most convincingly emotive characters to me. But when we see Order 66 executed, Yoda feels every one of those Jedi die. Across the galaxy, he feels every single one go down under the guns of their trusted compatriots, and he feels their pain and their fear and their surprise. And he has to feel shame and failure. He knows whether he's right or not. He blames himself for that failure because he should have seen it coming. And whether or not he should have, the dark side clouds much, etc., that's endlessly debatable. But the fact is, Yoda has a telepathic connection to every living Jedi, and in the nearly 10,000 who die in that one sequence, we see maybe half a dozen, but the rest of them go too. And Yoda feels every single one. And I think that is brilliantly conveyed by a CGI character. It's a great moment, and it really makes you think about the end of an era and what it means to the only living being that has been alive for the last nearly 1,000 years of that era.
Yeah. Wow.
I also do like seeing Palpatine doing his evil emperor shtick to Luke, like, "Oh, strike me," because that's the best thing about evil. Like, evil is the first one that'll tell you, if you take vengeance, you're just as bad as me. And I think that's silly because of course, evil wants you to think that. Evil doesn't want you to kill evil. That's why every Disney villain dies by falling off of something while the hero vainly tries to save them. So yeah, that moment where he's like, "Strike me down," he does that whole shtick, and it's great. And he's wrong, but his line when he says, Luke says, your overconfidence is your weakness, and your faith in your friend is yours. He's snarky, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I think with the Emperor, with that thing, it's not necessarily striking him down would be necessarily bad, but it would be what is the mindset? What would the mindset of Luke when he would strike him down? If he strikes him down in anger, if he strikes him down in rage, then he's giving in to his base emotions. If he's doing it because it's the right thing to do, it's the thing that will save, he's doing it not necessarily out of hatred or malice, but out of more of
compassion for the universe.
Yeah, compassion for the
I'll give you that. I love McDiarmid's portrayal of the Emperor as this oily, unctuous, like that's so insincere. I'm afraid your friend. Just so. It reminds me of the Shrek movie, the second Shrek movie, when Shrek is trying to call for Fiona through the window and she can't hear her, and fairy godmother helps. Oh, Fiona, I don't think she can hear us, puppet. And I like that the way he approaches. But I've gotten away from my main point, which is Yoda feeling Order 66 go down is for me the best moment of the trilogy and surpasses most emotional beats in the sequels as well.
What about you, Garrett?
I was going to go with the whole sand. I hate sand speech from episode 2.
We can all be thankful for that.
Oh, good. Yeah.
No.
I gotta head out now, so
You've scared off the guest.
Wow.
Not the first time, and it won't be the last. No,
Dang it, Garrett.
My one of my all-time favorite memories of just from watching Star Wars as a kid growing up. I mean, obviously Empire is hands down my favorite of all the films. It's the one I probably watched the most growing up. Anytime I could rent it from the library when we were living in Arizona, anytime it popped up on TV once we moved back to California. It's the one I enjoy watching the most just because there's so many emotional beats to it. And I didn't understand most of what I was watching as a kid. But I think I secretly have harbored this love for horror as ever since I was a kid, even though it terrifies the bejesus out of me. And so the scenes where Luke is dealing with there's some legitimate jump scares in Empire Strikes Back, probably more so than in any other film. Like when the Wampa shows up at the beginning and attacks Luke, that is terrifying. When you see the Wampa approaching him in the cave as he's trying to break free, you feel that tension ratcheting up. But then like there was a point for the longest time where I was terrified of the whole introduction to Dagobah, because when Yoda shows up, it is a jump scare. It terrified me as a kid. And so there are these moments throughout the film where you are literally, as the audience, you're forced to feel those moments of fear that Luke is experiencing. And I mean, if the first film in the series was about hope, The Empire Strikes Back is definitely about fear. That is the overall theme of it.
The midpoint of a trilogy never ends happily.
Right, exactly. And it's fear of the future, fear of the unknown, fear of, especially like when Luke is in the cave and he's experiencing the trial of the mirror and he is facing off against Vader and he thinks he's won, and ultimately it comes down to the fact that when that mask explodes outwards, he sees himself. He sees what he could become, not even knowing that he is the son of Anakin Skywalker. and that
Yeah.
Vader is Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
And so, and there's some really terrifying moments, and it makes you pause and wonder. And one, it shows just how good the writing on that film was. Secondly, it shows just how good the direction on that film was.
Yeah. One thing I got to say really quick, going back to the jump scares, there's one scene in Empire that, even though I've seen Empire, I mean, hundreds upon hundreds of times, that scene where the first Minoc lands, hits every time I jump. It's just like in Jurassic Park, every time the raptor comes through the back of I jump. But yeah, every time that first Minoc hits, I'm just like, oh. But you're right. I mean, that scene in the cave, in the dark side cave, that's just very, very, for me, I gotta go with Andrew. I love the fight between Vader and Luke. I almost said Anakin.
Luke is his name.
Yeah.
May have heard of him, you know.
I think I have. But and my favorite, it's one of my favorite lines in all of the original trilogy. It's where he's just cut off Vader's arm and he's looking, and the Emperor's going, good. And he throws the lightsaber down and says, "You failed, Your Highness. I'm a Jedi, like my father before me." And the way he just looks at Vader goes, "Like my father before me." I'm just like, sends chills behind me every time. Of course, the Emperor's got a great rebuttal. So be it. You can do it. Yes.
So be it. Jedi. You know, Andrew, I have to interject here. I've developed a speech impediment after cosplaying Palpatine more or less constantly at every opportunity since 2000, but back to Halloween of 1980. I've developed a speech impediment, and I like to joke that I can no longer pronounce the word Jedi any other way than Jedi.
Well, you just did, but
You just,
Well, yeah, you know, just with friends, but
Yeah.
good stuff.
That's funny.
But yeah, that scene. I mean, like you said, I think it's.
I like that Luke calls him Your Highness. I think that's a nice moment.
Yeah, that's right. It's like
class,
I still
you know?
respect. I still respect the authority that you hold, but
Right. I mean,
I'm going to.
you are an elected official. You know, I'll respect the office, if not the man. Oh wait. Late breaking update. You are not elected.
He was initially.
In fact, I have terrible news for you.
Yes, but it's interesting that you made Garrett made the analogy that if A New Hope was about hope and Empire was about fear, then I believe you can look at Jedi and Jedi is about redemption.
Mm-hmm.
It is the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. I've heard it often say, who was the Jedi, Return of the Jedi, everybody thinks like, oh, that's Luke who was the Jedi that returned, but I'd argue that it was Anakin
Mm-hmm.
was the Jedi that returned.
And that's if you're looking at it as an individual, but if you're talking about collectively, it's the return of the Jedi to the galaxy. They haven't been seen publicly since since Order 66.
Yeah.
And
I mean, except for the 200 last vestiges who escaped between comic books and video games.
Yeah.
There's always
we won't go into muddled history. I mean,
there for a little while there, it seemed that the only Jedi who actually died in Order 66 are the ones we see on screen. Everybody else is like, oh no, we're good, we're sorry. Like,
yeah. A new Jedi gets introduced. I survived Order 66. It's like, yeah,
well, that's
I get
a funny
mine.
trope. And Andrew, that's like whenever we see new technology introduced in the saga, it's actually some ancient technology that's been revived.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we talk about real life memories? I like hearing about our favorite moments, like on screen, but I'm sure we have some emotional beats that have taken place in our own lives.
Yeah.
Sounds good. How why don't you lead us off on that one, man?
Well, I do have one prepared. I'm old enough to have been. I think 3 of the 4 of us are old enough to have seen the first movie in the theater. I was only 4, but I did see A New Hope in a theater in Tehran, of all places. So God knows how short it was. Whatever they cut out. But I did see it, and it is literally one of my earliest memories. I still remember the striped collared shirt, the sweater vest, and the corduroy pants. I was bringing my Luke and Leia figures with me to the movie because we got the toys in '77, but the movie didn't make it over there until '78. So I've been playing with Luke and Leia, and of course they were on a date because we didn't know. And I remember being excited to bring my figures to this film so they could like see the movie with me. And it's great. I have a daughter now who's 6, and I love seeing her take emotional care of her toys. You know, like don't tell the Powerpuff Girls there's a new stuffy I want to introduce them. And I like that moment. So at any rate, so we're walking to the theater, and I remember asking my parents, don't say quietly so the figures wouldn't hear me. Don't say anything about where we're going, because I wanted it to be a surprise. And that is sort of the dawn of my fandom. And then I saw Darth Vader, and I was just like sold. I was like, well, so this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, is liking this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that moment of being excited not just to see the movie, but to see the movie with my friends who were in it. And that was a great moment, and always makes me feel good.
What about you, Andrew? What's a real life moment that, like, in your Star Wars fandom that?
Yeah. Well, I don't quite have something as deep as what Brian had. That's pretty impressive. So what's interesting, kind of just about my background with Star Wars, is I always had like the figures growing up, you know, but I didn't know really, like I had heard of Star Wars and I had the figures, but I didn't know character names. I hadn't seen the movies or the shows at that point. It wasn't until the pandemic, when I had all this time at home, and I was looking for movies to watch, like long series that I could watch, and I was like, hey, there's this Star Wars, let me check this out. And you know, watch A New Hope, and I instantly just fall in love with the story and the characters. And even for a movie in the 70s, I was like, hey, this looks really good, and the filmmaking behind this is really impressive. So I kept watching the movies, and then I was watching the shows, and you know, Mando season 1 had just come out, so I watched that. I was blown away by that. But I guess it's not really a memory, but kind of one of the things that I'm thankful for about my fandom in Star Wars is for everyone I've met, all the friends I've made through it, you guys included, everyone in Feast of Fandoms included. I would not have met you people if it wasn't for Star Wars and me finding that franchise. So yeah, that's what makes me just so thankful for it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I speak to that, Andrew? That's really great to hear. I love that. I was at Star Wars Celebration 19 in Chicago. It's just sort of like just before everything shut down for the pandemic, and I made a friend I'm still friends with now. He is a Luke Skywalker cosplayer, and to an amazing degree. To the extent that on day 1 of the con, he does episode 4 Luke. On day 2, he's episode 5. On day 3, he's episode 6. Like he goes through the saga on days. And here's the thing: his now wife cosplays Mara Jade.
Oh, I thought you were going to go a different route there. I'd be like, does she cosplay Leia? That would be weird.
No, she cosplays Mara Jade, among other things. She also cosplays Dr. Aphra, which, no fair. She's an amazingly talented cosplayer and Asian. So, like, she's just made to cosplay Dr. Aphra. But the way that he proposed to her, they have a whole choreographed duel that they would do at conventions. And at one point, they spin around back to back, and then in a big twirling motion. And at New York Comic-Con in 2020, they did the spin around, and when she came back to face him, he was on one knee with the ring.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
and I met those two by Luke was doing an Instagram photo shoot with a Vader on a landing, like a little courtyard area at the convention center, and they were standing on either side of an escalator. And completely coincidentally, as they are posed up, lightsabers crossed, I came up that escalator in costume as Palpatine. And so while they're posing for Instagram, Palpatine rises out of the floor between them. I didn't know what was happening. I just crested that floor, and everyone, oh! And
no one would have believed that wasn't staged.
And like I hung out with them at every opportunity through the con, and It was amazing. At one point, they had me do. Luke and Morrow were doing a similar shoot. I don't have Instagram. I'm too old for it. I'd get put on a list. But they were doing a photo shoot, and they asked me to be Palpatine between them. And I didn't know they wanted a static display. So while they're crossed, I'm in there saying, "His compassion will be his weakness, my hand. When the time comes to strike, he will attempt to save you. And then you will crush him and wipe this rebellion from the galaxy." And she's just like, "Dude, you got to stop. You got to stop." But to hear you say the friends you've made along the way, like that's exactly right. Like I haven't seen those two since 2019, and I speak to them at least once a week.
Nice.
Very cool.
What about you, Garrett? What's a real life memory?
So I mean, I've been diehard Star Wars fan since I was probably about 5 or 6. I mean, my earliest memory is seeing Return of the Jedi in theaters, and I wasn't even walking yet.
Same here.
And if I was, I don't remember walking. But growing up, I always felt like an outsider because I like Star Wars, because it, as cool as it was back in the 70s and the 80s, by the time you get to the late 80s, early 90s, it had kind of fallen out of favor. It wasn't super popular. And it wasn't until I was back in high school in the 90s that the late 90s that where they started doing the releases of the original trilogy on special edition to theaters. And of course I saw them when they were being re-released to theaters, and I enjoyed every second of it. But this was all building up to the release of episode 1 in 1999. And about a week before the movie had a couple weeks before episode 1 released to theaters, like I got super in trouble for something. I don't know. I think like I
illegally cannot say is what he's saying.
No, I probably legally could. I just can't legally remember. Big difference. But yeah, I was grounded. I had no privileges whatsoever. My folks took the keys to my truck.
Wow.
And which was the worst. And I was gearing up for it was a end of the year school concert for choir. The school that I was at and another campus, we still had students who were part of one unified high school before they finally split off into separate schools. And we had the same choir director. And so we were doing this big old huge ensemble piece using choir members from both choirs for Masquerade from Phantom of the Opera, which is a beautiful song to sing. And the funny thing is my voice had been shifting. I had gone from being a tenor to a baritone. So I got moved into the baritone section.
Sorry.
And
I did that same number.
As I'm standing there, we're in warm-ups. We're waiting for our director to give us instructions, and I'm talking to this guy that, like, he seemed really familiar, and we probably met at a few events, prior, and I just never really remembered him because he went to a different school. And we got to talking, and we found out that we both had a love for Star Wars. We both had a love for science fiction. He's more of the Trekkie than I am, but we can both appreciate and stuff like that. And while he enjoys the movies and the books and stuff, like, we both get on about the lore. And so he's like, "Hey, are you going to go see episode 1 when it drops in theaters?" I'm like, "I would love to, but I am super grounded." And he's like, "Well, I've got an extra ticket." And I'm like, super grounded. And I hadn't even told him who my parents were, but he figured out who they were. And during the reception afterward, he beelined it over to my dad. And somehow, I don't even know how he phrased it, how he worded it, but he convinced my dad, who is a lawyer, who argues for a living and negotiates contracts. He lawyered my father into letting me off grounding for one night to go see the premiere at our local theater. He's been my best
friend. And he's here tonight, folks. Let's bring him out.
I would love to. No. So his name is John. So John, you're in good company. But he was like, he's been my best friend for for 25 years, 25 and a half years at this point. He was the best man at my wedding. And so were it not for my love for Star Wars, I would not have met my best friend.
Wow.
Well, for me,
That's a good one.
like Garrett, Return of the Jedi was one of the first movies that I remember seeing in theaters, that I can distinctly remember going to a theater and watching this. I remember being terrified of the Emperor.
Rightfully
so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, like with Garrett, it was one of the like big memories for me was seeing Episode 1 in theaters. You know, I had grown up with Star Wars. I don't remember life without Star Wars. Like, it's just been a part of my life forever. And I remember getting off work, and where I worked at a grocery store at the time, a local grocery store, and the movie theater was across the street from us, and the local radio station was there, and the place was packed outside, and I worked overnight, so it was about 7:00 in the morning, and the local morning show was there, and they were doing a contest to give away tickets, and it was who can do the best Yoda impersonation. And I got it. I can't remember what the line was. They just wanted me to say something like Yoda, like, interesting this is. I like
Give me the tickets, you will.
Yes.
That's good. Both
like
of you
that
very
one.
good.
And we went in, and what I remember more was just the camaraderie, like you hit on about, and everyone else is kind of about the camaraderie of the fandom, and how you're standing there waiting in line, and you're surrounded by people of all ethnicities, black, white, Asian, conservative, liberal, every type of demographic you can think of.
It all goes away when you're surrounded by Star Wars. You know?
Different social classes, everyone's there for one reason and one reason only, is they love Star Wars. And I remember the second time I went, there was a bunch of different people. There was a Star Trek fan club that was there, and I remember getting into they had like
fanboys. It was like fanboys.
Lightsaber, dual bladed lightsaber that someone let me borrow, and having a duel with a Klingon with a batleth with me and a double-sided lightsaber. It was great.
Oh man.
But yeah,
I was challenged to a duel by a Mace Windu at Celebration 19. He's in costume. I was in Palpatine. He's like, man, we gotta do this. Now,
tell me you did the 360 twist.
Couldn't quite do that, but,
but
what I can do is the cackle. And he couldn't keep going. He's like, I can't do it if you're going to be doing that. I was like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And then
I'm not a good duelist.
You know.
But I said this before. I think that's one thing that was missing from my experience with the sequel trilogies, is that, you know, because now you can get the tickets online, you can show up and just, you know, be there, is that whole idea of waiting in line for hours, if not in some cases days. There are people who would camp out, like literally camp out for days.
It was like a Black Friday, but for
but for movies, and just talking with everybody and the camaraderie. You know, I think was kind of missing from the sequels.
I got to do that for the trailer in 2019 when they dropped the trailer or 2017 when they dropped the trailer for Last Jedi. There was a panel where they would be discussing Last Jedi and show that trailer, and the con set up an overnight waiting line, and I got to do that. Wow. It was great.
That was nice.
I was working with another media outlet, so I was just like walking the line, interviewing people, and I don't think I sat down once all night long. It was great.
Yeah.
Then the trailer starts, and you're.
No, it was there was some emotion there.
Yeah.
No, I meant like you're just tired, not bored.
Oh yeah. No, I have a biological process that I've invented, Andrew. I call it extroverted synthesis. and that is the more people that I interact with at a convention like that, the less sleep, food, and water I need. I've had I went to BlizzCon 2010, and the friends I went with still joke. They're like, I didn't see Brian eat or sleep the entire week we were there. It's just like the last thing I saw the first night was Brian at 3 a.m. saying, "Okay, let's get some sleep. We got to get up early." I closed my eyes, and the next thing I saw was Brian at 6 a.m. wearing different clothes, having shaved and showered. Like, okay, time to get up.
Yeah.
Yeah. What people don't know about Brian is that he has actually figured out the secret Sith power of energy vampirism.
Oh, so everyone else is getting tired, and he's just like,
Yeah.
you know,
He
doesn't need Red Bull.
Actually,
He's got.
You're not actually the first person to say that, Garrett, and not always in jest.
Here's like a Marvel. Here's a quick Marvel reference. He's like Agatha. He
Yes,
absorbs people's
and
powers,
I have been all along.
drains them. As a matter of fact,
I get that
I'm feeling kinda
reference.
Sleepy. Yeah.
This reminds me of just something I'm thankful for in the new canon. People can debate for decades whether or not it was a good thing for Disney to buy the property, and they have. But one thing I'm grateful for in this current genre of Star Wars, this current generation, if you will, is I remember the period between 1983 and 1998 when there was never going to be any more Star Wars movies. And then I remember the period between 2003 and 2014 when there was never going to be any Star Wars movies. And I read all the EU books, and I was a fan of many of them, but not most of them. I got a whole TED talk on what's wrong with the Yuuzhan Vong and how I didn't care for. There's like no continuity. Luke and Han and Leia get married twice. Like, which novel is canon? There was no. Yeah, it didn't grab me a lot, but I read it because it was what was available. Same thing with the comic book. So what I'm grateful for now is once Disney brought the property, the first thing I thought was they're going to put all the coolest stuff behind very expensive gates, and they did do that. But the second thing I thought was there's going to be Star Wars till I die now. There's never going to be a no more Star Wars period because Disney doesn't spend that much money on a property without. Now, there might be Star Wars I don't care for. Right. And there have been. I didn't care for the Resistance cartoon. There are some aspects of the sequel trilogy I don't care for. But I will always have the option. And I think that's important to note. It's not Stargate. I loved Stargate, and there will not be any more Stargate. I'm never going to see another show come out. And the quality of the films and the shows that are coming out, the frequency we can discuss that until we all die. But what's important to me is there's always going to be the opportunity. I'm going to be able to see another show before long. There'll be another show to come out, and if I don't like it, swing and a miss, guys. That's it. I'll watch the next one.
Fun fact: I think Jack O'Neill and Daniel Jackson were both Marvel villains.
Oh yeah, Ego the Living Planet, and of course Ultron.
Yeah.
Did you see? Okay, we got some Marvel fans here. Let me digress for a moment. Did you see how it should have ended for Avengers: Age of Ultron?
Yes.
Ooh,
I don't.
They had the Ultron robot come out and saying that now I'm free. There are no strings on me. That's from Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And so he says that, and Scarlet or Black Widow's like, is that Pinocchio? And he's like, no, I have another one. I can show you the world. And he just goes through a bunch of Disney lines, like, you're ruining my childhood.
I like it. Is this kind of connects to Star Wars too, but the 2009 Star Trek, how it should have ended, where the Narada goes through the black hole, and as it exits into the next universe through the black hole, it's the Death Star sitting there, and it fires the super laser and destroys the Narada, and you see Vader on the bridge going, "Oh, we are so going to get sued for this."
I like that one.
Hooray! All right. Hey, Andrew, you said you had to cut it short tonight. Why don't you tell everybody where they can connect with you?
So if you are over on X, Blue Sky, or Threads, you can find me there at Andrew Haley 05. As far as Feast of Fandoms go, Monday nights at 8:30 Central Standard Time. We go live for MCU Mondays. Thursday nights, same time, we go live for Cantina Happy Hour. Next Thursday, we don't have a show this Thursday. Next Thursday, we kick off with Skeleton Crew.
Ooh.
Because that'll be out. The
Yes.
time we're recording this, it'll be out in 8 days.
Yeah.
So by next week from this Thursday, it'll be out. So we will start covering that, which I'm excited for it. I think
Yeah.
it
Me
could be a
too.
fun,
Goonies
fun
in space.
80s
What's not
show.
to like?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are you guys talking
So-
about on MCU Mondays right now?
Oh, we are starting Daredevil season 3.
Okay.
So we'll do that till I believe Kraven the Hunter comes out here in 2 weeks. I think 2 or 3 weeks.
That's still
it
coming
comes
out. That's
Is that
Yeah.
an MCU film?
It's
No,
a Sony.
it's Sony adjacent because
Sure.
Yeah.
Sony
I
doesn't
get
want
it.
to
I
give
just
up any
wasn't
of the
sure.
rights to Spider-Man, and so long as
Mhm.
they do something that is Spider-Man adjacent with one of the villains, they don't have to give up the rights back to Marvel.
What's funny about
I'm
Garrett?
my dumb web.
What's funny about Garrett mentioning that? I was just about to say this. I saw a post today that said that Craven will not reference Spider-Man in any way. So I'm like, why even have it in the Sony Spider-Verse? I mean,
Yeah.
have it just be its own thing at that point, because Venom still references Spider-Man. Heck, Venom
Mhm.
was even in No Way Home for a
Yeah.
brief moment. So
And
We'll
then
see.
that's been from what I understand removed from existence.
I'm disappointed that they
Yeah.
didn't introduce Venom the way he was originally introduced, because I'm old enough to have read the first Secret Wars series,
Mhm.
and I would really have liked to see how the MCU made the Beyonder work.
Oh,
I've seen
Dear
some
Lord,
theories
don't- oh,
that even though Venom is done as far as Sonyverse wise, that they could bring him into the MCU
Yeah.
potentially, if they found a story. I mean, maybe Spider-Man 4. Maybe they work. Maybe they
My
find a
wife
way
and
to
I
work
just
that out.
we just watched Deadpool versus Wolverine. Now, some households have a
Ooh,
swear
nice.
jar. We have a unnecessary movie explanation jar, wherein every time, like, oh, it's funny because he said that because his wife is Blake Lively, and earlier when you talked about how many bones are in the human body, and there's
Yeah.
one more if he's watching God, that's because. And my wife is just like,
Keeping a tally of how many
Yeah.
dollars you add to that jar.
yeah.
Yeah,
But-
the deal is
Tell me-
we're going to donate that jar to my daughter's school at the end of the year. I think we're going to buy my daughter an international airport first. We could use an international airport,
I was
Yeah.
listening to another. Yeah. You mentioned about the Beyonder, and I've been listening to a podcast on the X-Men, and they just talked about Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2, and the scene where the Beyonder shows up in Peter Parker's apartment, and Peter Parker has to teach him
Explain him how to poop. Yeah, that's the first reference to actually using the bathroom in Marvel Comics. Would that explain this strange fullness I feel in my abdomen? And Peter
and like
Parker
his
says, "Oh,
line
boy."
after he's like, what's the line? He says something like, he says something like, and then just disappears.
And of course, the funniest thing about that is the Beyonder at that time is mimicking Steve Rogers in like a white unitard. So this is Captain America in a onesie asking Peter Parker how to poop. It's great. That's a great series entirely. Like, who knew who the Molecule Man was until Secret Wars?
Exactly.
Much like, and Kang is a bit player in that series. I think they should. Andrew, I would like, since Disney bought everything,
Yeah.
I think they should make a series of Toy Story movies where we could go back through the EU and make all of the EU stories, but just make them in the Toy Story context.
Oh,
A Star Wars Toy Story, Heir to the
Yeah.
Empire, and it's just the action figures doing this. Because, I would watch that 2-3 times. I don't
Yeah.
care if I already know.
I'd
how
love
it
for them.
ends.
I'd love for them to do a Star Wars What If. They did What If
that
for
would be
Marvel.
awesome.
I would love for
Yeah.
them to do,
Yes.
because then what you could do, if you wanted to go this route, you could take EU books, sum it up in like 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever.
Hmm.
You're not covering everything, but that's what the book's for. So you could just take the
Yeah.
gist of the story and or even do a full season on a book or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or even not a book, but just I would love to see a Star Wars What If in that style.
You know the meme, we always see a meme of like, if something goes differently and then it's just cut to directed by George Lucas. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to join, I want to, go out to Toshi Station. No, Okay, and then directed by George Lucas.
Yeah.
That'd be a funny episode of What If Star Wars. It's just like a series of those, like how if Luke didn't really want to go, or like
Right,
Ben
yeah.
died of cancer before you. So that's, I would love to see that, and we've
Yeah.
all read the Infinities comics and all that stuff. And,
Mhm.
I think
Well,
there's
I like
a rich mind to.
one thing
draw from.
I'd like to see is, in kind of the same vein of What Ifs, is like to do little shorts from a different point of view,
Ooh, yeah.
like seeing different things from different characters' views, like seeing the Battle of Hoth from an Imperial view, like from an
Mhm.
Imperial soldier that's there on Hoth. I don't know. I think that would be fun.
Yeah. One thing I've always sorry.
Or like, in any of the battles from like different points of view from, just, bit players that are,
John, you're not going to be happy until they make a Tag and Bink series.
true. Yeah.
You are describing that.
You know,
I think
even if
that
they
would be
did
great.
what DC does with their animated movies, take an EU book, give us an hour and 20-minute animated movie of it, and
Mhm.
people us fans would watch it. Obviously maybe not casual fans, but because DC has had some good movies when they do that. There's some stinkers. There's some stinkers in there, but their animated stuff.
Most of DC's animated stuff, especially the DC AU,
Mm-hmm.
where it was consistent storytelling, consistent actors across the board playing the same
Yeah.
characters across multiple.
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion is a fantastic Green Lantern. He's a much better Hal Jordan than he is a Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner wig looks stupid. Anyway,
John Constantine.
And
Fillion work, but
the whole at least the thing is that they've done is they've been willing to take chances on the animated projects and do stuff like that instead of just doing these one-offs. Like there was a whole point where you had all these different stories being incorporated, and some of the characters were kept across the board as far as the same actors and stuff like that. And I think DC's animation studio through Warner Brothers has been probably one of the best things that they've done since at least
the Harley Quinn cartoon is outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, I will go off to say, and this is kind of getting on a tangent, that if you're looking for great animated superhero series, I'd say Justice League and Justice League Unlimited are two of the best animated superhero series there are. I mean, the humor's there. I mean, the characters are the way they should be. They act the way they should be, and it's just.
I literally just introduced my son to Batman the Animated Series this weekend.
Nice. Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, which I grew up with it. I was his age when it came out, maybe a little bit older. And we watched for whatever reason, HBO Max is putting the episodes in the order in which they aired on TV, not the order in which they were written. Because if you have the DVD or the Blu-ray sets, the very first episode is supposed to be On Leather Wings introducing the Man-Bat. But instead, it's actually the Cat and the Claw, which introduces Batman as a quasi-established crime fighter, and you deal with Catwoman. So, anyway,
Man-Bat is kind of a deep villain to start with. That's surprising to me.
Well, the reason why they did that is because they wanted there to be, they were still playing off the idea that Batman was still this urban legend, and no one had actually physically seen Batman until that episode.
Until then, he'd just been Bat Boy.
And so having a bat creature flying through Gotham made it a little bit more terrifying for an urban legend.
Talking about the certain point of views, I would love to see a TV, any kind of screen. I recently happened upon a video of Ian McDiarmid reading the part of the Emperor at the end of Return of the Jedi from the Shakespearean rewrite of it. If you've ever seen those, and of course, Ian McDiarmid is a Shakespearean actor and does an amazing work. I'd love to see those Shakespearean Star Wars brought to life, even in animation. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's my point. I'm like, give us an hour and 15 or 20 minute little movie you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, Andrew, I know you gotta
um,
you gotta head out. So
Yeah, it was great talking with you, Andrew.
yeah,
Thanks for
yeah,
coming on.
I can't stay longer, but you know,
no, that's no problem, man. No problem.
Next time.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Not a problem, man.
Yeah,
Take care. All right.
What a class act. I'm glad he was able to come on with us.
Me too. Me too.
Great guy.
It was fun when I was with him on MCU Mondays. The few times I've been on there.
I love meeting what I would call, I mean, I'm old enough. I think this is fair. I don't mean no disrespect, but the younger generation of Star Wars fans who are not only chronologically younger, but like he came to the saga in the pandemic. He's been a Star Wars fan for 4 years and still look at the insight. It's really great to see.
I've said this before. I don't know if I ever told you this story, Brian, Brian. Where I came up with our outro for it's not just my Star Wars, it's not just your Star Wars, it's our Star Wars. It was during I believe it was the trailer for Last Jedi had just come out, and I was watching some of the reactions that people were doing for the trailer, and how people were getting emotional for some of it, especially for one guy in particular, burst into tears when he heard that I think it was one of the first or second trailers that it's Leia's theme that you hear, and many hears that sound, he just breaks down because like this is right after Carrie had passed. But there's another one where it was these two kids, and they were young. They were like probably 12 or 13 years old, and they're watching it, and Lando shows up, and he's flying the Falcon. They're like, "Well, who's flying the Falcon? Who is this guy?" And all the comments were so negative. Like, how do you not know who Lando is? How can you call yourself a Star Wars fan and not know who Lando is? And I made a comment on one of these, like, guys, instead of putting these kids down, us older fans should be the ones to bring them up and say, like, here, let me tell you who Lando. Let me tell you about the coolest man in the galaxy.
Right. Don't hate on them for not knowing them. Envy them the opportunity to learn. Yeah.
Teach them. And so that's kind of where I came up with it's not, we shouldn't be gatekeeping as older Star Wars fans who've grown up with the saga.
We should be holding that gate open. Come on in.
Yeah, come on in. And just because, I've said this before, just because we don't like a certain aspect of the new Star Wars doesn't mean we should be putting people down that do like these things. We should be welcoming them. We should be, expanding them and saying like, hey, if this movie or TV show or whatever that I don't necessarily like, but you do, if that brings you into the fandom and exposes you to everything else, come on in. That's why I say it's not just my Star Wars. It's all of our Star
The analogy
Wars.
I always use is there's no sense arguing over what your favorite ice cream flavor is.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like it does. Like just because you like butter pecan and I like chocolate doesn't mean you don't deserve to eat ice cream.
Vanilla is forever superior.
For a while, though. Okay, fair enough.
As long as it's not banana, I'm good.
Yeah. I am reminded of when I went to see episode 1 and with a large group of friends, 12 or 13 of us, and when we meet Ambassador Palpatine, I said, "Ha!" and nobody in the theater knew who that was. Which I mean, I hadn't thought about it at the time, but the word Palpatine is never spoken in the original trilogy.
No,
and you don't know that name unless you read the books or got the action figure.
I think he is mentioned in the original novelization of, I believe it's Jedi. He is mentioned as Palpatine.
No, they use his name in all the novels, but most people who were watching episode 1 in 1999 had not been avid readers of the novels in the interim.
I learned the name just a couple of years before that, thanks in part to the Star Wars role-playing game.
I learned it by reading the
West End Games, was it, Garrett?
Yeah.
Huh?
West End Games?
Yep, West End Games.
Very nice. That was
Nice.
mine too. That's
I
where I
learned
came
it-
up with the name Darth Carosis.
I learned it by. So my fandom, like I've said before, I kind of grew up with Star Wars. It was always kind of there. It was always like it was cool. I like it. You know, I remember my cousin had all of the Return of the Jedi toys. He had the Jabba's throne room, and he had the treehouse set for the Ewok treehouse set.
I had
so
a
he played-
Weebles treehouse I repurposed.
Yeah. So I remember playing with that, but my fandom where I became obsessed with it came from the first time reading Heir to the Empire. And that kind of led off to this whole thing of like, I need to know everything about this. And there was a time where I got really into the crafts. So like I could tell you everything there was about the X-Wing. I could tell you the company that made it, like the corporation that made it, how fast it went, what the armaments was, the different variations of it. Like for instance, the X-Wing was originally developed as an Imperial craft.
Yes.
However,
Okay.
the Incom Corporation, the heads of the Incom Corporation defected to the rebellion when they were going to be nationalized, when they found out they were going to be nationalized by the Empire, and took with them the plans for their new prototype fighter, starfighter, the T-65 Incom X-Wing Space Superiority Starfighter.
I'm trying to find something. There is canonically Kylo Ren had a calligraphy set.
That sounds about right for him.
I made a meme showing like the unknown. When you said you were into the crafts, I mistook your meaning. As in like the crafts that characters within the saga created. And I made one that was like Darth Crate's costume design book and Darth Bane's cross-stitch kit. You know,
no.
Anyway, carry on.
Interesting fact that a lot of people don't know is the general in A New Hope, when they're on not Echo Base, but they're on Yavin 4, and the general who's there, who's giving them the plans, then of course is General Dodonna, who is also the person who designed the A-Wing Starfighter. Was designed as the so.
I think that makes sense.
All right.
I can't find my craft name. I've made too many of them.
Oh.
All right.
Well,
it was great talking to you guys again. This has been a good episode. I love it.
It's been fun. It has been. So next week we are coming into December. It's going to be a short month because with December we're going to be taking the holidays off for that. So next week we are talking Life Day, the greatest holiday in the Star Wars universe. The only holiday I can think of in the Star Wars universe. Well, there is Empire Day. But yes, we'll be talking about Life Day, first introduced in the critically acclaimed sorry holiday special, but has been also mentioned throughout the some of the newer stuff has been brought up, and just kind of talking about that. So we hope you will join us then. And Garrett, why don't you tell the fine people out in the internet land where they can find you at?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my books, The Archives of Sync Ran. It's a currently 5-book series, fantasy adventure, dragons, elves, magic, and vampires that do not sparkle. Thank God. Then I'm also a host on The Right Way, which is my show on YouTube. Just search for GKJ Publishing and you'll find me. We talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. And aside from this show, I also am now the co-host of a new Feast of Fandom show called Snackame with Janae Barton. We had our first inaugural episode drop this last Friday, where we were talking Ranma one half while eating ramen noodles. So it was really delicious. This is going to be a monthly series. And so we'll have a new episode dropping later in December, just before Christmas time. And that one will be focused on the first season of The Legend of Vox Machina, if you haven't seen it on Amazon Prime.
All right. Brian, what about you? Where the people find you at?
You can find me at the Sith Library and Archives, a fan page on Facebook dedicated to Sith culture, lore, and mythology.
Awesome.
Posting as Darth Korosis. Come see me.
That we will. All right. As for us right here, of course, if you want to check us out, you can do so on our Instagram is at war_of_the_stars1. We are on X at warthestars1. That is also our email, warthestars1@gmail.com. We are on YouTube at WOTS77. Our show goes on YouTube, on the Feast of Fandom's YouTube channel on Wednesday night. Check us out on Feast of Fandom there. And the next day from now on, you can catch us on our own Spotify page. Just search for War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. We'll be going on there, our audio only version on our own page there the next day, which will be Thursdays from now on. So check us out there. As I said, Feast of Fandoms. Check out all the shows on Feast of Fandom. If you want to support the show, Ko-fi.com/War of the Stars, or check us out on our Spreadshirt store, spreadshirt.com/shop/War of the Star, war-of-the-stars. And I believe that is about it. Again, thanks you for listening and watching. And always, as I said earlier, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.